All right, let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Southern Scrap Nation's podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Jonas. Welcome to an episode of Sips and Slips. We got a camera now, so perfect on that end. Hopefully, this YouTube video will work out. I'm going to try this one. It'll be on there. Probably won't promote it as much. I'll promote the next one since I'll have a guest on. But welcome to the podcast. Hope you guys had an awesome week. We've got some news in the MMA world, but today we're going to go over UFC 223 coming up this weekend. Cyborg, Chris Cyborg versus Yana Kuniskaya. I hope I got that right. For the featherweight championship of the world, the women's featherweight championship of the world. And then in the co-main event, you have Brian Ortega versus Frankie Edgar for potentially the number one contender spot in the featherweight division in the men's division. On top of that, you've also got Sugar Shane O'Malley doing another. I don't know what's on the main card, but he's got another fight against another not necessarily up and comer, but fighter in more in his level and popularity. And then on top of that, you've got Andrei Arlovsky versus Stefan Struve. Those two are, the not the end of the heavyweight division, but they're one of the older guys in the heavyweight division. Stefan Struve, the last one to knock out Stipe Miocic, and had potential. However, being 7 feet tall in a very cardio-inducing sport is a very hard thing to do, and especially in such a grueling sport. That he's had heart problems. He's had, problems even up to the day of the fight and hours before the fight. So we'll see how that fight goes. On top of that, you got some other guys on the card. It's not a bad card. You got the return of Kat Zingano, who hasn't fought since UFC 200. Yeah, UFC 200. And then you have the UFC debut of Mackenzie Dern. She's a jiu-jitsu, not phenom, but jiu-jitsu star in that sense. Her father, Megaton, I think that's her father. Highly respected in the jiu-jitsu world. She comes from a jiu-jitsu family, Brazilian American. Super marketable in every sense of the word. She's been featured on the most recent Embeddeds, and she's a dime piece. So those are all things that'll definitely give her some like it'll give her some visibility this weekend. Depending on if she wins. If she wins in some decisive factor with a submission or something, definitely you'll get some more UFC fighters or UFC fans on board, and you'll get some more of the more average Joe MMA fans on board as well. So I'm excited to see that. This fight, as some of you may know, originally was slated to be Max Holloway versus Frankie Edgar, which is a fight that we've all been looking forward to for a very long time. Since the first time was supposed to be in Detroit, Frankie Edgar pulled out with a broken orbital. I'm pretty sure he got from practice, had to get surgery or had to get it fixed up. And that's when Max Holloway fought Jose Aldo for the second time and won. And now Max Holloway hurt his ankle or foot during training camp. So this go about, Frankie's like, I still want to fight, just like Max still wanted to fight. So they threw in Brian Ortega, who just came off of a very impressive win over Cub Swanson with a second round. I guess it was like full guard guillotine, head and arm guillotine, but within like standing, not standing, like Cub wasn't Cub was standing, but Brian wasn't standing. It was sick. It was a slick submission. That's what Brian's looking forward, or that's what Brian looks for. Anyway, as I digress, a lot of things have been happening in the MMA world, including yesterday. You had Jon Jones had his hearing with the state of California from when he got popped for PEDs, in this case Turinabol, after his fight with DC and after he knocked him out. John Jones, he had his hearing and was fined $200,000 plus an additional $5,000, 200,000 for how much he got paid. It's like a quarter of his payday from that fight, and then the 5,000 is I think it's supposed to be for the pay-per-views, just like the fine is, relative to whatever he got from the pay-per-views. And then he got his license revoked from the state of California, retroactive to the date that he won the title against DC. So that was July of last year. So I guess he could reapply for a license in the state, but he's still having to wait for a hearing from USADA. So until that's done, John Jones is still, we still don't know what his future holds. So we're still waiting on the USADA hearing. On top of that, after that's done, we'll probably see where that goes. Maybe he'll be able to fight another state for the time being before he gets his license back. The reason why I bring this up, and the reason why I hope that the USADA fight or the USADA hearing goes well, or maybe they don't. You're looking at maybe like a 2-year suspension, or looking like maybe like a 4-year to 8-year suspension for John. The other day, Dana posted a picture of Brock Lesnar and him together, and it was just Brock Lesnar in a UFC shirt and Dana with their arms around each other, and a smiley face was the caption, and that's it. So John's contract with the WWE, or Brock's contract with the WWE, is almost up. John's going through all his hearings. If the deal gets done and it all coincides, we may see John Jones versus Brock Lesnar. However, this whole USADA hearing and the state of California hearing, it seems like they're trying to, not necessarily give the max punishment to John, because his lawyers, his lawyers argued, and John argued, that he unknowingly took the substances. John didn't really take the hearing so seriously, kind of acted not so serious during it, so that kind of affected him when it came to the disciplinary side. I think they still would have charged him with what they charged him, or fined him with what they fined him, regardless of how he was behaving. I just don't think it helps him in his future cases going forward with the USADA. If he doesn't take it seriously, USADA's not going to care. They're not going to give a shit whether or not he fights again. And that's just, since USADA has they're employed by the UFC, but their decisions aren't based off of the UFC's what benefits the UFC, right? They're doing it to what benefits the sport. You can argue that maybe, and you heard it on Joe Rogan's podcast, Jeff Nowitzki doesn't believe John intentionally took the Turinabol, so maybe that helps him. However, if John doesn't take these hearings seriously and just assumes that he's going to get whatever penalty and he'll just ride off into the sunset later and fight again, they may put a harsher stamp on his punishment. And I don't want to see that happen. John's got to, he's got to attack these things in a smart way, but he's also got to attack these things in a way of, this is your second offense. Technically your third offense. People have been saying, get your shit together for a while. DC's been saying it. It's been more than 3 years he said this. Get your shit together. Like, there's not much more that you can ask for this guy. You can't play the young man card anymore. He's 28, 26. I know better, right? I'm not going to take steroids, even if I was in that position. Why? Why would I take steroids? Even if they told me you might get caught, or you can just blame it on this. There's got to be a certain point where you just got to cut the shit, and either you fight, and you you just obey the rules. You go with what is enlisted or instructed with what you can and cannot take, or you don't fight, or you go fight in Ryzen. I don't know, go fight somewhere that doesn't have such stringent problems or stringent drug testing rules if that's the problem. And John just tweeted this: drugs don't ruin your legacy or career, or whatever he said. Drugs don't ruin your career. Drug tests do. And only a guy that would be taking drugs or taking PEDs would say that. Who says that? Who says drugs don't, like, drug test? Well, just in general, don't take them. You know, don't. That shouldn't be a statement that's coming out of your mouth. I can understand if it was definitely a tainted supplement in the Tim Means situation where they immediately got that substance, or they immediately got the tainted supplement. They brought it, they tested it. John's been doing this whole thing, and it's been dragging it longer than it needs to, because he's got good lawyers and he can do this because he's got the money. But John, if you want to create a legacy or career, you don't want to spend all your money on lawyer and legal fees. You know, if your career is based on whether or not you can get away with taking drugs or PEDs and trying to beat a system, and then the money that you win from those fights you just end up spending on lawyer fees, is it truly worth it? Is it truly worth the hassle of trying to hide and do all these different things just to get away? And then you do get caught, and then you're forced to give up a bunch of your purse, not necessarily your purse, but essentially the money that you got from the pay-per-views, the money that you got from all these things, lose endorsements, lose all these things, and then try to beat it by just throwing lawyer money at them and then telling your fans, I'll be back. Don't even worry about it, guys. I'll be back. It's kind of like OJ. Like, OJ did it, and then he beat the system, and then writes a book about it. Just don't do it, you know? There's certain things that we can forgive John for. We can forgive him when he was younger and he crashed his Bentley and had DUI or whatever because he was young, dumb. We can forgive him for the cocaine, even though I don't really, even take that, don't even take that against him. He's young, dumb, once again. Like crashing into the woman and hit and run accident. Then the follow-up tainted, or the follow-up getting popped for whatever at UFC 200, and then following that, this now. He keeps on coming back, oh, I'm changing, I'm talking to kids, I'm doing all this stuff. You can only carry the charade on for so long, right? You can only dress up like a sheep for so long until all these sheep start wondering, that guy kind of looks like a wolf, right? You can hide and show all the community service, show all the hard work you're putting into the gym, or at this point your garage, I don't know, where he does these training videos. But at some point the hardcore MMA fans are going to be like, fuck it, move on. We already have DC and Stipe for the championship in July. The UFC is doing kind of a good job in trying for us to forget who Jon Jones is. But John's still the guy, so it's going to take a while. And John's not helping himself. If John doesn't want us to forget him, then he needs to get back in there and he needs to take this stuff seriously. If he doesn't want us to remember him, then keep doing what you're doing. And not necessarily your legacy will be tarnished. We can look up your name on Wikipedia and see your world championship record and see that you were undefeated at light heavyweight, except for that one time that you smashed Matt Hamill and got DQ'd for it. But in the conversation of greatest of all time, you get that asterisk. And you're part of the newer crop of fighters where that asterisk shouldn't be there, right? We can forgive the asterisks on guys like Fedor and the Nogueira brothers if they did have asterisks there. We can forgive the Anderson Silvas. We can forgive those guys, the pre-USADA guys. But the post-USADA guys, which John technically is a post-USADA guy, even though he's going through troubles when USADA came in. And you're a pro athlete at that point. Who even needs it? He doesn't need it. it's a crutch for him where he can use it as an excuse if he loses. But when you call that you're going to knock out a guy the second time you fight them, and then you knock him out the second time you fight them, maybe you don't need that crutch. But everyone has their demons. I'm not in John Jones's mind for me to understand what he's going through or where he's been or understand all this. However, I can tell you from a fan's aspect, the more this childish shit goes on, the more fans you're going to lose. And I'm not talking about average fans, because average fans you already lost. Average fans, not even average fans, casual MMA, every UFC card, you lost them. You're not in the news. They don't give a fuck. The hardcore fans now, you're starting to lose them. They're starting to see how you behave regardless of how much trouble you're in, and you're trying to take this prodigal son thing until you're a prodigal adult, and it doesn't work. Sometimes at one point, people are starting to respect the DCs now. We're starting to respect the guys that don't do that kind of stuff, and then they work hard and they get to where they are, and they steal your dreams. All right? John's been the heel. DC's starting to turn that heel now, but not towards John, right? If they were to fight again, obviously, I'd put my money on John. However, DC's taking John's dreams. He's taking what John wanted to do. He wanted to take the heavyweight title. Maybe they're getting Brock in there for whoever wins this heavyweight title. But that's on John. Anyway. So, enough of that. That was pretty much the biggest news. We got a couple fights that got announced. We got Kevin Lee versus Edson Barbosa. That's going to be on the Atlantic City card, I'm pretty sure. Don't mind the phone. This is where I'm looking up the cards and the most recent fight announcements. I don't know why I just brought attention to it. Well, that's not helping me. All right. Well, anyway. Yeah. So we got that fight slated. We got a couple more, I'm pretty sure, that got slated. Let me see if I can find more events. After this event, we got some pretty good cards coming up after this one. Ferguson versus Khabib is the next pay-per-view. So cross our fingers. We hope to God that the MMA gods, at least, that nothing happens. All right, Poirier versus Gaethje. After that, we have Verdum versus Volkov, March 17th. So, okay. David Branch is also on that card versus Thiago Santos on the Atlantic City card. And then you have Aljamain Sterling versus Brett Johns. Ooh, that's an interesting card. Or interesting fight. I got Brett Johns in that one. Corey Anderson versus Patrick Cummings. And then, yeah, that's going to be the one with Barbosa and Kevin Lee. So that's slated to be a very good card. All right. Why don't we get into the card this weekend? So we're coming off the card last weekend where Jeremy Stephens beat Josh Emmett. Kind of moving the featherweight division forward a little bit more, which is what we want. You got Jeremy Stephens, who most likely after his win, since now technically in the rankings, he's number 4. Because he beat Josh Emmett, who was number 4. Because he beat Ricardo Lamas, who was clearly number 4. But then just because you beat someone, I guess you're now number 4. I don't know. I don't know the way it works. The rankings are kind of weird. So, that being said, now that Jeremy Stephens is up there, he'll probably fight Jose Aldo for another title eliminator contender fight. And this fight and then whoever wins this fight between Brian Ortega and Frankie Edgar will be the next one to fight Max Holloway. So they're kind of getting the featherweight division a little bit more in line and a little bit more, streamlined, which is perfect. Especially it honestly took a while. It took a while from when Conor won the belt and then moved divisions to now for this to all sort itself out. However, we'll start with the main. We'll start with the main fight. Why don't we do that? You know what? We'll save that one for last. All right. Before we get started, why don't I give some shout outs? So I've got Charlotte Jiu-Jitsu Academy here in South End, run by John Piper. Want to give a shout out to those guys. We've been training hard. We got fights coming up March 17th at Fight Lab. I'll be coaching alongside with John, quartering some of those guys. And then on top of that, Fight Lab is March 17th. And then in May at the UFC gym, shout out to Jose Davila and Billy Alexander. Those guys putting in some coaching work with the guys, Kendall, where they're trying to get a fight in May. Yeah, we're trying to get fights in May for some of the guys there. Jose, I think, is looking to make his pro debut in May as well, so look forward to that. The Grady Cole Center will be hosting the March 17th fights here in Charlotte, like I said, under Fight Lab. Tickets are on sale now. Get your tickets. And then on top of that, not much else to shout out to. Shout out to Atlanta next weekend. I will be heading to Atlanta to go train with that American Top Team down there. Hopefully I'll get to say hi to some of the Lima brothers. All right. So, this card, let's start with not much to say. Actually, the prelims are pretty fire of a card. It's actually a pretty fire card. So, Jordan Johnson... No, not Jordan Johnson. Brian Caraway is making his appearance against Cody Staneman. At the 135. Brian Caraway hasn't... I think he won his last fight. He's not my favorite. Yeah, he beat Aljamain Sterling, beat Eddie Wineland, so he's on a 2-fight winning streak. His last loss was to Rafael Sunsao, so top contender. Makes sense. Brian Caraway, he's always been one of those wrestler 135ers, pretty big for the division. He's all right. There's nothing about him that stands out to me, especially once you cross that top 10, who will have to go against. It doesn't really, nothing that he does jumps out at me. It'll be good to watch this fight. Cody Staneman is 16-1, great record. We'll see where his last fight. He's on a 2-fight winning streak as well. So yeah, we'll see where this fight goes. Tom Duquesnoy, he beat Tyron Ware. So he's beat two guys that are already on the up and coming, or like the come up in the 135 division. So he's making himself more of a prospect, and he's trying to make himself a contender now. And he can make that off of the name Brian Caraway for sure. Following that, you got Mike Pyle's retiring fight against Zach Ottawa. Oh, by the way, I got Cody Staneman on that next fight. I think he's just hungrier. I think he's got more to fight for. And I think he's trying to make a name for himself. And that, against a guy that's not necessarily... He doesn't have an attribute of his that's, oh, how is Cody going to get by this? I think he doesn't. I think Cody gets by. And I think he, makes a name for himself. So then you've got Mike Pyle versus Zach Ottawa. This is, like I said, Mike Pyle's retirement fight. Zach Ottawa is a very aggressive 170er. He's pretty built. Like, he's aggressive when it comes to the fight game. He wants to get in there. Mike Pyle, scrappy veteran. Hopefully Mike Pyle wins this so he can go off on a win. Do it in a way where it's beautiful for the crowd and everything. And I think Zach Ottawa, he's coming off a loss, I'm pretty sure. Let's see. Yeah, lost to Li Jinglang, who was the last person to fight Jake Matthews, right? Jake Matthews, and he got in that fight. Jake Matthews won. Li Jinglang tried to gouge his eye out. Tried to pull it out of his eye socket almost. And I think Mike Pyle, I'll see what he's coming. I'm pretty sure he might be coming off a loss as well. I'm pretty sure he's coming off of a loss to like Alex Garcia or something. Anyway, it was a pretty. He got, yeah, he got like knocked out by Albert Garcia or Alex Garcia. Anyway, that was pretty nasty. I'm pretty sure that's why he's looking at this as a retirement fight. If he wins, regardless if he wins, I think he should retire. Because I do favor him in this fight just because of the scrappy veteran knowledge that he has. And Zach Ottawa is not a one-hitter quitter kind of guy with his punching power. And I think Mike Pyle does it. I think he finds a sneaky, either he wins through a decision of doing something sneaky, slash crafty and veteran, like, excuse me. And when I say sneaky and crafty, I don't mean anything like dirty or anything like that. I just mean there's certain things that veterans learn inside the octagon once you get more comfortable in fighting that they just do. Tony Ferguson has a lot of these little ticks and stuff that help program you, help get you to do what they want you to do without really doing big movements, right? Or throwing little things that you wouldn't expect just because they've had time in there to try it out and see what works. So then you got CB Dollaway versus Hector Lombard in the 185. CB Dollaway, coming off of a win, and he's also under lawsuit. He's in a lawsuit with the UFC because there was an elevator accident and he was a part of it. He got hurt. Actually, I'm pretty sure CB didn't even fight. Wait, did he fight in his last fight? Maybe he's coming off a loss. I'm not. No, he beat Ed Herman. Okay, so he did fight that fight. So he's coming off of a win to Ed Herman after that elevator incident that I guess he's suing the UFC for because he's got lasting injury due to it. And then you're getting a guy in Hector Lombard. Both guys kind of on the tail ends of their career. Hector Lombard, he's coming off of a loss to Anthony Smith in a TKO where he was doing pretty well, and then Anthony Smith took over in the end and just capitalized on his lack of cardio. And that's what CB's probably going to have to do in this fight, is just take it on to a lot later rounds and win either by decision or a late, a late finish or however. Hector needs to go in there and put him out in the first round. When I talk about these guys, especially these two, I can talk about game plans and what they plan on doing and what they should do and what they're looking to do. The point is, Hector Lombard is old enough and been in the sport along with CB Dollaway that I can talk about what game plans they could go in there and do. But we all know, and when we all look at these fighters, you just know they're not going to do that. That'd be like me going, yeah, Nate's got to get in there with Conor, and he's got to bounce on his toes and, stick to the outside with that jab and, and move around and threaten with wrestling takedowns from whatever the case may be, threaten with spinning kick. That's not who they are. They will never fight that way. They're not young enough to train that way. They've got their fighting style. When I look at these guys, I look at fighting styles because they've not necessarily mastered fighting, but this is their fighting style, and this is what it is. This is what it'll be. So when I look at these two comparative, when I look at these two contrasting styles, I see Hector Lombard being able to get in there quick and put the gloves on CB. However, I think because CB Dollaway, I'm pretty sure used to be a light heavyweight fighter. Well, I guess he moved to, actually no, they're both, no. Hector Lombard used to be a 170er, and now he's a 185er. My bad. And that's why they're in the same weight class now. And I think with Hector Lombard being able to be at 185 and not have to cut all the way down to 170, it gives him a little bit more of a break, and he's going to be able to go in there. And, I mean, like I said, he almost finished Anthony Smith, so I think he's got a good chance against CB Dollaway. I'll take Hector Lombard on an early stoppage, either first or second round. Then you got John Dodson versus Pedro Munoz. This fight was slated to be at a previous pay-per-view, I'm pretty sure. Got rescheduled. Pedro Munoz was way overweight, couldn't make the weight, so they rescheduled it, and now they're fighting. Pedro, very slick guy on the ground, very slick jiu-jitsu, tries to get chokes in when he can and put the work in. However, John Dodson, very explosive, very also veteran, crafty. Um, he lost his fight against John Lineker. I thought he won that fight. He won recently against Eddie Wineland. Um, in this division, he needs to make a statement. I think he needs to knock Pedro out. A lot of us don't remember that John Dodson knocked out T.J. Dillashaw for the Ultimate Fighter, to move on to the Ultimate Fighter. He needs to do the same thing. He needs to start making his name known to these guys. Again, he needs to put the fear in the hearts of the bantamweight division, right? Because eventually he wants to fight TJ again. Because to him, that's a fight that he thinks he can win, and a fight that he should think he can win. Because he has before. Obviously, TJ's a different fighter now. But if John Dodson wants to get up there, he needs to make a statement. I'm gonna go with Pedro Munoz on this fight. Before I chose John Dodson in my last breakdown, I'm repicking, and I'm gonna pick Pedro Munoz. I've been watching some film on him. I think he gets it done. I would love to see John Dodson win in spectacular fashion, but I think these newer guys are just, once you have enough film on you, and once you have enough film where you're not really doing much different in your last fight, not necessarily your fighting style starts to get predictable, but the older you get, the less you're able to do. When people throw crazy kicks, when Yair Rodriguez throws crazy kicks, one, that's obviously due to his skill and his practice and all of that. But let's not kid ourselves, that's also due to young athleticism. There's stuff that I can do now that I probably won't be able to do, most likely won't be able to do when, 10 years from now, even 5 years from now. Because it's such a hard and grueling sport. And I think that's the same thing with John Dodson. He can show you stuff that you've seen, maybe not against him. So it'll be different once you face him. But realistically, if you watch enough film on him, what he does isn't going to be any different than what you've seen. And I think Pedro Munoz can capitalize on that and show him something that he's not used to, right? Give him some of that young blood kind of, which he's not really like a young blood. He's 15-2. Come on. Let's see. I'm trying to find out who performance of the night against Rob Font. Bruh, he's on a 4-fight winning streak. Huh? 4-fight winning streak. Young. Well, not young. 31. He's in his prime. That's what I'm trying to say. In his prime of fighting. All right, so then you got Beneil Dariush versus Alexander Hernandez, who they don't have a picture of. Alexander Hernandez. Oh. All right, guys. Well, I think Beneil Dariush is going to win this fight. I don't know why they're putting him against this guy. Maybe he was supposed to be slated to fight someone else. I'll look into it in a second. But Alexander Hernandez is 8-1. I'll look up more about him. Beneil Dariush is coming off a loss. Oh, excuse me. Beneil Dariush is coming off a loss to Edson Barboza. Flying knee. Crazy. Edson was like programming him to try to take a shot after his jab. And he did. And Edson jumped up, flying kneed him, spectacular knockout. Sucks to be the recipient of it, and sucks to be the recipient of like this guy's 25, San Antonio. Yeah. Sucks to be the recipient of almost like knockout of the year contender. But I'm going to go with skill and experience, especially in this case, over Alexander Hernandez. I don't really know much about him. There's a chance that he could knock Beneil Dariush out. I don't have any video of him right now. I haven't seen anything of him. So I'll watch some of it. And depending on how that is, I'll make my judgment. But for right now, Beneil Dariush for sure, just due to experience. Now you've got Ashley Yoder versus Mackenzie Dern, right? Two 115 pounders, two straw weights going at it. Ashley Yoder, Her last fight, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, she lost to Angela Hill. That's right. That's right. So she's on a two-fight losing skid right now. One's 5-3, one's 5-0. I think Mackenzie Dern wins this easy. Not easy. I think Mackenzie Dern just has better jiu-jitsu. And the girls' strawweight division, nothing to take away from girls' MMA, but it's like men's MMA when it first started. You can have specialists right now in the sport if you're a woman. The women that are more than specialists, like Chris Cyborg, arguably greatest of all time, because she's not a specialist. She's everything. She's a wrestler, but she's also been doing the sport forever. Um, and then you have Mackenzie Dern, who in this situation is kind of like Hoist Gracie, where once she gets a hold of you on the ground, it's only it's only inevitable that she'll grab a submission or she'll just control the fight for the whole entire time. The biggest issue is, can Mackenzie Dern cut the weight? Can she make the 115? She's missed weight once or twice now, and that's something that she needs to address. 115 may not be your weight class. 125 may be your weight class. But she'll just have to see. She'll just have to see. I'd probably favor her at 125, actually, more than I would at 115. Her body type, she's big for 115, so, I mean, good on her. She's definitely not big enough to be at 135. But I definitely see her doing much better at 125. Next is, so I have Mackenzie Dern, submission, makes a statement. So now, you got Kat Zingano versus Caitlin Vieira. Caitlin Vieira. Caitlin Vieira is actually, no one's really been talking about her. Yeah, she beat Sarah McMahon. She beat Ashley Evans Smith, and she's on a 3-fight winning streak. But so I think this is definitely the perfect person to pair Kat Zingano up. Give her someone that's on the come up, someone that's already proven themselves by beating a veteran, a prior top contender, a top title contender as well, and give it to the Hungry Lioness, the one coming back from she lost to Juliana Pena. She's on a 2-fight losing streak. I mean, she hasn't fought recently because of things that have gone on in her life and changing camps and all these different crazy stuff that have happened. But she's hungry. She wants to get back in there. I follow her on Instagram. I follow her, on social media, and she just wants to get back in there. And I have a good feeling about Kat's return. I hope she does well. I feel like the Kat that comes in and fights on Saturday, you can't make any excuse whether or not she wins or loses. That's going to be the Kat that we remember. And then you have Caitlin Vieira coming off of a 3-fight winning streak, who, if she beats Kat, is just another prior title contender she's beaten, can add that to her resume, and essentially puts her into a contender kind of talking spot. Well, you can pair up against another, you can probably pair up against top 5 at that point if she goes in there, does work, and either wins the 3 rounds or submits her or not, whatever the case may be. You could be talking you could be talking about Caitlin Vieira in a way where it's gonna be more you should be more marketing her than just, oh, did you hear about that Brazilian chick, right? She should be more of a home name in the more MMA MMA community, and the hardcore MMA community, right? So I don't know why people are looking past her anyways, but definitely worth looking at. So good to see Kat Zingano back. I hope she does well. I hope she does win. However, I see Caitlin just that new breed of fighter, right? Giving her a hard time, and then I see it going to a 3rd round decision. Right, unless Kat puts on that wrestling pressure and just that's the one thing. So Kat lost to better wrestler the last time that they fought, but remember, Kat also beat Amanda Nunes with wrestling and just top game. In a split decision, however, she still beat her. So, you know, it's youth versus experience at this point. Toss up. I'm gonna go. If Caitlin's the underdog, I'm gonna go with the underdog. I'm gonna go with the underdog on that one. I like that underdog pick. All right. So you got Stephen. Sorry guys, I've been sick for a while. It's that season, man. Also, like, the flu's been worse this year. It's been worse this year. Old people are, getting it and having it for like 6 weeks or something. Allergies or whatever. North Carolina. Pollen and stuff. All right, so now you got two vets of the sport at the heavyweight division. Stefan Struve versus Andrei Arlovski. First off, listen to these records. You got Stefan Struve with 32 wins and 9 losses, followed by Andrei Arlovski's with 26 wins and 15 losses. Jesus. More than 40 fights for Stefan Struve and more than 40 fights for Andrei, or 45 fights or 40 fights or so for Andrei. 41 fights for Andrei. Professionally. Not even amateur. Professionally. You're just talking about the old guys. I like the heavyweight division because these fighters can fight for a longer period of time. However, they old fights. They old fighters. They fighting. Got old guys throwing down. I like Stefan Struve in this fight. Andrei, he moved back down to Florida. He was on a good win streak for a while, and then he lost to Stipe, and then he continued to lose after that, I'm pretty sure. But he lost to Stipe. And, I mean, there's not much to say about that because Stipe is now the champ, right? Oh, well, he beat Junior Albini recently. Okay, yeah. So after he lost to Stipe, he lost to Overeem, lost to Barnett, lost to Ngannou, lost to Tybura. Then he got a win over Junior Albini. I mean, they gave him some leniency because there's not really many people in the heavyweight division, but UFC was a little lenient on him. And then you look at Stefan Struve, who's kind of been inactive because of his health issues, but he lost to Alexander Volkov in a 5-round fight, which Volkov is the new breed of heavyweights, but he still beat Daniel Olemenchuk. Then he knocked out Bigfoot Silva. Looking at his record, he's had his wins and losses, and I think it's more dependent on the Stefan Struve that shows up that day. Because, like I said, he's beaten Stipe. He beat Bigfoot Silva. He beat Nogueira. So he's beaten, some of the bigger names. He's kind of a big name himself, considering how tall and big and, how much of a statement he is just by walking around. But in this fight, it's perfect. His hand speed's quicker than Andrei's, and his reach will be able to, keep him at bay, as well as the ability to clinch up with Andrei and fire knees up the middle. He shouldn't be really too worried about Andrei's takedowns. If Andrei does go for a takedown, I'm sure it'll be telegraphed. I'm sure he'll be able to do whatever he needs to defend it. But other than that, I don't really see anywhere that Andrei can beat Struve besides just maybe getting that one knockout punch. But yeah, I think Struve wins via TKO or knockout first or second round. Now you've got Sean O'Malley versus Andrei Sukhentov. I don't know why they're having this fight on the main event or the pay-per-view. Sean O'Malley, obviously the guy that's doing everything. He's a new breed of MMA fighters, young. There's not something that he does necessarily good, but not necessarily bad. He's an all-around fighter. He knocks people out, tall, lanky, especially for the weight class. Cool. So they gave him Andrei Sukhentov, who's a boxer. I had to look him up. I've seen some of his fights. He's a stand-up guy. So they're giving Sean O'Malley someone to oblige him in the stand-up. That's what they're doing. I mean, there's not much more to that than that. Eventually, at this 140 or the 135-pound weight class, he's gonna have to go against Brian Caraway, right? He's gonna have to go against a wrestler. He's gonna have to go against guys that aren't gonna give a fuck about your cool swagger and style, like a John Lineker, who's gonna just walk forward, hit you to the body, hit you to the head, hit you to the body, hit you to the head. Right? You're gonna have to try to out wrestle John Lineker. So, for right now, Sean O'Malley. Yes, this is the guy. Against this fight, Sean O'Malley is going to win this, I think, personally. If not, but I don't think it's going to be one of his, I don't think it's going to be a spectacular fight. I think it's going to be a hard fight for him. I think he's going to have to go 3 rounds. I don't think it's going to be what he's been used to. And I think it's going to be up to him to dig down deep and figure out whether or not if he's all hype, you know. Remember, guys, we have the thoughts of, oh, this guy's the next thing. And we talk about hype train derailing. There's not, if you're a fighter, there's not one person that believes more in yourself than you. If you're at this level, right? If you're a professional athlete, you gotta believe in yourself to a point. There are fighters that know they're not the hype trail. You know, Frankie Edgar's been around for a while. Obviously, Frankie's not like, I'm the next big thing, da-da-da. But he just believes himself. He believes that he can beat Holloway. He believes that he can beat Brian Ortega. He believes da-da-da. He believes himself. However, there are others. The Ronda Rouseys are the extremes. They believe in their own hype train. If you think belief in a hype train, like the Francis Ngannou hype train, where a lot of people were so on board with him, there's a point where even those people that are the hype trains themselves will believe in their own hype. And the reality doesn't hit anyone harder than someone that believes in their own hype. So it's up to Sean O'Malley if he gets rocked or if he gets hurt in the second round or whatever the case may be. If he gets in his own head and starts to you know, what's the word for it? If he starts to, doubt his own hype train within the fight and realize, oh, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. Well, shit. Then I guess it's, not necessarily over, but it's just how you address it after. But in the fight, that can't happen. No matter how bad the outlook may be, no matter how bad whatever it may be, he can't have any doubt, right? They're putting such a hype on him that it sucks for a young fighter. It sucks for Sage Northcutt, right? Sage Northcutt had his last tough, hard fight, and luckily it was in Texas because he won. It's that same idea. For Sean, these fights aren't going to get any easier. He's not going to get any. They're not going to get easier for him. They're going to get harder and harder, harder and harder. And that ability to be young and believe your own hype, and not necessarily believe in your hype, but be realistic about it, that have the Justin Gaethje approach, that not necessarily go in there and bang and put your head down and just try to throw, but realize that the game's a motherfucker. Demetrius Johnson's the same way. He's like, I'm going to lose eventually. I mean, you just have to be real with yourself. And those guys, I mean, it's not easy, especially if you're young. If I was Sean O'Malley and I was just knocking motherfuckers out, and as young as I am, I'd feel untouchable, I'm not even that good, and there are days in the gym where, I feel like I have my own hype train, but, reality will smash you down. That's why I love jiu-jitsu. Reality smashes you down. So, I think Sean O'Malley, it's up to him. If he gets it, if he mentally can get, past any hardships in this fight, I think he wins, but I don't think this is an easy fight for Sean O'Malley. All right? I think you get a guy in Andrei Sukhomtov that obliges him to stand up, but it's not going to go down from just one hit. You have a chance for this to be fight of the night, or the co-main event could be fight of the night. All right? Not necessarily this is going to be fight of the night because of the technical aspect of it. That's why I think the co-main event, if it goes the 3 rounds, it's going to be more likely to be fight of the night. But in more of like a brawling situation, yeah, this could totally be fighting the night. Unless Andre Sugantov or Sean O'Malley just take someone down and check them out. But I take Sean O'Malley in the fight. I believe the hype train as it is. Just because the UFC is doing a good job and feeding him the right people. So, moving on to the co-main event. You've got in the red corner, Frankie Edgar versus Brian Ortega. Like I said, originally slated to be Frankie Edgar versus Max Holloway for the main event. Max Holloway pulls out. You get Frankie versus Ortega. Ortega coming off of a win over Cub Swanson, who both submitted. Fun fact. Not really like a fun fact. You can look it up. They're both coming off of wins. What's funny about Frankie is he's coming off of a hype train derailing himself, as he, in this last fight, second round Dr. Stoppaged. I verb Dr. Stoppaged. Yep. That's my new thing. I'm gonna verb that. The doctor came in and stopped the fight for Yair Rodriguez. The name of the game was get inside, ignore the kicking game, grab a hold of Yair's legs, and go for the takedown. He did a very good job defending submissions. Yair Rodriguez is known for submissions off his back because of his long legs, being able to throw triangles up at all times. Having Ricardo Almeida in your corner and being a Ricardo Almeida / Renzo Gracie black belt for Frankie Edgar, not necessarily as a Renzo Gracie black belt, but he trains with those guys. His ground game is incredible. His wrestling, obviously, A1. His chain wrestling is by far one of the prettiest things to see in MMA. His ability to grab a leg and then immediately know that he's going to something else, and you're just trying to defend a single leg, but he's already thought, I'm going high crotch to double. Maybe I'll go high crotch back to the single off this single. So he's already 2 takedowns ahead of you. There's one thing to be 2 steps ahead of you on the ground, but in takedowns, you talking top level MMA fighter. Dan Hardy made a very good point. There are guys that are very good wrestlers that come into MMA, but then there are very good wrestlers that are for MMA. And he's right. Frankie Edgar is one for MMA. He is one of those types of wrestlers, and I agree. There's not a lot of wrestlers. Khabib's a very good wrestler for MMA. Same thing with GSP. GSP was a very good wrestler, but for MMA. Trains with definitely high-level wrestlers, but their MMA works so well because the ability to hold the opponent down in different positions, strip their base, punch. All of Frankie's movements on the ground are designed for when he tries to pass or when he tries to move. He's also hitting his opponent. He's keeping himself safe, and he's also landing strikes, and these strikes aren't... And anytime he throws strikes, they have intention behind them. It forces the opponent to cover up. They land with power. They're not pit-pattering little shots on the ground where you can just eat those and start moving your hips. No. Once Frankie starts getting you to the ground and pound is nasty. Nasty ground and pound. He makes you pay for going on the ground. Brian Ortega's submission ability is way better than Yair Rodriguez, and he submits with intention. He's got that black belt squeeze, as some fighter or someone will say. I think Renzo said it. It's the black belt squeeze, and I agree. He's got that black belt squeeze. And his boxing's looking fantastic. His cutting angles, switching stances within his combinations. They both have incredible boxing. But I just think that everywhere that Brian Ortega is good, Frankie's just better. Sorry. There are areas where Brian Ortega is better than Cub Swanson in the submission. That's where he won. A lot of these guys, submission-wise, or submission defense-wise, Brian Ortega is way better than they are. I would even argue that with Max Holloway. I think Brian Ortega's submission offense is way better than Max Holloway's submission defense. Frankie Edgar, however, is the unicorn. Frankie Edgar's everything is better than Brian Ortega's a submission, submission, a submission offense. Getting Frankie into a guillotine, I guarantee you, is going to be almost impossible, right? But if there's going to be one person to do it, definitely going to be Brian Ortega. Just that it's going to be very hard. Frankie's got a small neck or a big neck, very hard to get your arms around it and really conceal a very good choke. His arms are short for darsing. Arms are short for triangling. There's certain things on being a short, stockier guy that jiu-jitsu actually works out in your favor, especially in takedown defense or submission defense. I've got, I'm not the biggest guy in the world, so when guys go for submissions, it's pretty easy for me to defend. I'm not easy, but I can get out of the spaces, because the smaller the spaces, the easier for me to get out is. If you have big space, it doesn't require that big of space either, because I'm not that big of a guy. So, let's say I'm on the bottom, my ability to get out of side control or get my hips in to get to full mount or full guard is a lot easier than a big guy who needs bigger space for his big legs. It's the same thing with Frankie. He's given up reach advantage. He's given up, length and stuff, but his ability to ball up and not get submitted and then explode with punches on the ground. So my thing is, if Brian Ortega wants to be successful with a submission, he has to hit it the same way that he hit Cub Swanson, where Cub's head was down in the clinch and then came over. I just think that Frank Edgar's fundamentals in boxing and wrestling, the ability to keep his head up, I think Brian's going to go for that guillotine, and then every time he does, Frankie's going to just go to his back and take him down. He's going to keep his head up, turn the corner, and take his back. It's the greatest submission defense. If you're going to win a fight, what's the system that I like to use is the easiest way I can simplify it. What's the number one goal in fighting? Get to opponent's back. Regardless of striking, regardless of whatever sport it is, just get to their back. Why do you think they cut angles? If there were no rules in boxing, and I cut my angle, and I got behind you, and I just start punching you in the back of the head, it's very hard for you to defend the back of your head, except if you try to do this, which now with the camera I can show you. I can try to do this. Yeah, that doesn't really do much. I can't see you. Right? You're hitting me to my spine and stuff. Right? So same thing with jiu-jitsu. Once I get to your back, it's very easy for me to get a choke in. It's a lot easier than me attacking you head on, because you can see. These are pretty fundamental, basic things that me explaining them, coming out of my mouth, it sounds like, yeah, but of course, Daniel, what do you think, we're fucking 3? No, I don't think you're 3. 4 maybe, but not 3. No, it's one of those things where obviously it's common sense. But it's common sense in a way that if I was to put it on paper, you'd be like, yeah, of course. Rear naked choke, get behind him. Rear naked choke, you're behind him. But when you're in a fight, when you're against someone that's also following you and tracing and tracking your movement and motion with you and going along with you, you realize that getting to someone's back is a very hard thing. Both these guys, both of them, have that mentality. Frankie likes to slam you, and he likes to get into that position where he's not necessarily on your back, but you're turning away from him, and he can hit you. Whereas Ortega, he likes to get to your back and submit you, because jiu-jitsu, Gracie jiu-jitsu, submission, finish the fight. So it's gonna require him to take him to later rounds. However, Frankie doesn't get tired. So I just have Frankie winning this fight. There's nowhere I see Ortega beating Frankie, and it's one of those things where when Ortega submits Frankie, it's just going to be one of those moments where, oh my God, he submitted Frankie Edgar. He was the first person to finish Frankie Edgar. But it's one of those impossible on paper, see it to believe it moments. So hopefully this weekend we will see it, and hopefully Brian Ortega will have me believe in it. But for right now, I just believe that Frankie Edgar wins. Either decision or he doctor stoppages. That's right. Doctor stoppages. Brian Ortega. Same thing that he did to Yair. Frankie Edgar is a one motherfucker of a gatekeeper. I don't think he is a gatekeeper. He's definitely a top title contender and potentially next title holder. But for right now, Frankie Edgar is the worst gatekeeper out there. Cub Swanson's the best gatekeeper because, some guys get wins off of him. Some guys realize that they're not on the same level. But Frankie's like, no, 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 no. You got to come to me with some experience. Have you gone 5 rounds? No? All right, well, you're fucked. And I think it's one of those things. I think Frankie's just like, there are certain things that I can do that you fucked, and there's nothing you can do about it. So, leading into our main event. So, holy shit, that's so funny. So, yesterday, Monday on the Big Brown Breakdown, Brendan Schaub went off on the UFC for not having a picture of Yana Kunitskaya. I got it. On their website, it was just a black picture. And he's like, "Come on, UFC, like you have one job." And it's funny because they now have a picture of her up there. But it's true. If you have a fucking main event, you better have both the pictures up there. I mean, this is the website. If someone's interested in the UFC and they're interested in the UFC card this weekend, what's the most average person going to do? www.ufc.com. And if you got no picture up there and I'm trying to place bets on somebody and I can physically look at one of the people and I can't physically look at the other person, well, shit. It kind of wavers my betting, even though I don't bet that way. But some people bet solely on appearances. That's how weigh-ins and betting came about. So what can I say about this fight that people haven't already said, or that I can sum up in one sentence? Yana Kunitskaya, Russian, comes from a professional family, professional sports family. Trains in Jackson's, Taekwondo champion. She's Invicta bantamweight champ. She's fought Tanya Evinger twice, so they have a common opponent. My issue is Tanya Evinger finished her in their second fight, and it wasn't like Tanya did anything crazy that you didn't see in the Cyborg fight. What worries me about this fight is when they had Holly, who just fought Cyborg, and they realized that game plan didn't work, and Yana's only chance is to do that exact same game plan against Cyborg because they have no other fighter that went against her that could, that has any success. So they just have to go off the Holly home game plan. There's not much that Yana's going to do that Holly doesn't do but better. If she got submitted by Tanya Evinger, I don't see where she works on the ground. But the biggest takeaway I took from this is Tanya Evinger punched Yana in the face, and you can see that those punches to her face not necessarily hurt her, but she didn't take them well. I think this is going to be a case of Cyborg stands right there, punches Yana in the face, and Yana goes, "Ah, shit." She hits like a dude. And when I say dude, I mean like a 170er male. And she's just going to be shook. It's going to be one of those fights. It's going to be more like her Lena Landsberg, Leslie Smith fight, where these girls just get tagged and they're like, this paycheck better be fucking good. And they just take it. And eventually the ref comes in and stops it. If Yana wants to take it to the ground, Cyborg will be more than happy to slam her. I'm curious to see what Cyborg does in this fight. I'm curious to see if she tries to do another game plan or she just goes out there and just mauls this chick like she normally does. But with patience. I mean, she's been mauling chicks with patience, picking her shots, doing what Cyborg has been, really rounding out her game to a point where the veteran experience, along with the power, along with the skills, greatest of all time for women. The idea that she versus Ronda at any point was even a thought now, you look back at it and go, what? Her versus Ronda? Yeah, no, exactly. She's so fucking good. She's at the level of a male professional MMA fighter where all these girls that are in MMA right now are now just realizing that it takes more than just being a specialist. And Cyborg not only has experience of fighting, she has experience of being an MMA fighter, and not just Joanna's case, Muay Thai fighter in, a lot of these girls' cases, in whatever their specialty was, fighter. Rose did a very good job against Joanna because she talked about it in one of her interviews. As an as a fighter, or as a person doesn't have or a person that's a specialist, they were putting these girls against Joanna that were real jiu-jitsu wrestling oriented oriented girls, and what was happening was they would just go for takedowns and they would try to take her to the ground, and then Joanna was like, but of course that's what you guys are going to go for because I'm a striker. Rose having the ability to she's as equally as good on the feet as she is on the ground, maybe a little bit better on the ground, but she believed in her stand-up ability to where she was just like, why am I gonna, I'll just strike with her, see where the fuck that goes. And she did. She fucking she clipped her and hit her hard and dropped her and now and new. This is more one of those cases where Yana's a Taekwondo specialist, so she can throw kicks, and Cyborg's gonna just eat that kick and walk forward. You're not gonna give a fuck. There's nothing that she's gonna do that Cyborg hasn't seen, hasn't felt, and hasn't dealt with. I think Cyborg wins this either TKO or submission. But I see this as like, oh Jesus, another beatdown. Here we go. Which sucks because, which is good because it'll set her up, and hopefully Amanda Nunes. Oh, that's a fight that got announced. Amanda Nunes versus Raquel Pennington in Rio. If both these girls can get I think this was good marketing on the UFC's point. If Cyborg beats this girl and then Amanda beats Raquel Pennington, now you get a legit super fight because then you get these two girls. You can put highlight reel after highlight reel, and then you can slate them to fight each other, super fight that way. It's a good way of putting it. But like I said, I see Cyborg winning via dramatic knockout or TKO or some shit. I don't know. But it's gonna be a finish. So Cyborg. So going down the list, I got Cyborg, Frankie, Sugar Sean O'Malley, Stefan Struve, Caitlin Vieira, Mackenzie Dern, Beneil Dariush, Pedro Munoz, Hector Lombard, Mike Pyle, and Cody Steneman. Yeah, I have those guys. Yep, that's who I have for the fight. So upcoming after this, we've got the Alexander Volkov versus Fabricio Verdum in London. Oh, that's the London card. Oh, that's the London card. Oh, that's a terrible accent. So then we got Jimmy Manuwa versus Jan Blachowicz. In the co-main event, Tom Duquesnoy versus Tyrion Ware. The two people that Cody Steneman beat are fighting each other. Leon Edwards versus Peter Sabata, Danny Roberts, Oliver Enkamp. Not a lot of like known people on this card unless you're from the UK. Cajun Johnson's fighting. Mike Godbeard. A lot of obviously UK fighters and all that are on that card. So hopefully it'll live up. Hopefully it'll be good. Other news this weekend, you got Deontay Wilder versus Luis Ortiz on Showtime for boxing heavyweight match. Whoever wins this is hopefully Deontay Wilder wins. Go USA. I see Deontay Wilder winning this fight more than over Ortiz, and then that helps him set up for the Joshua Parker versus Anthony Joshua fight. So whatever Joshua wins that night is most likely to face Deontay Wilder. And that'll be fucking awesome. I'm excited for the fights this weekend. I'll watch them, get back to you on them, and yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed today. Remember to like, subscribe. Forgot to mention this in the beginning of the podcast. Like, subscribe. Tune into my YouTube channel. It'll be Southern Scrap Nation is the new YouTube channel. You can catch all the videos of the podcast now on them as well. I'll eventually start doing stuff, maybe like technical stuff. I'll go to the gym and break some stuff down with some of the other coaches. But for right now, you can check me out there. Thanks, guys, for listening in, tuning in, subscribing, liking. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell fight fans, tell someone on the street. It'll be your good deed for the day. I really appreciate it, guys. Once again, this has been Southern Scrap Nation's Southern Scrap Nation's podcast, and today's been another episode of Sips and Slips. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you back here on Sunday. Yep.